Welcome to the Value Builder Podcast, where we focus on real estate with a value-add mindset. Real strategies, real operators, real outcomes. Let's dive in.
Thank you very much for joining me today. And I'm really excited. A lot of people want to learn about small bay industrial. I've been doing that for a while, and I'm so excited to see that there's more and more people getting in. So that being said, welcome to the show. And maybe we can start where we can talk briefly about yourself. Just give us 2 minutes commercial. Know how did you start in real estate and how did you came about jumping in real estate and transitioning to that asset class we're going to be talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Saul. So even, before real estate, I started my career as a management consultant. Loved that, traveled a lot, was living in Dubai for a bit, but realized that I didn't want to work like in this corporate environment my entire life, right? I wanted to be more entrepreneurial. So I actually jumped into doing a couple of e-commerce businesses, and did that for about 3-4 years after leaving consulting. And one thing about e-commerce is that, it's really cutthroat. You're fighting for a lot of eyeballs. Marketing gets more and more expensive every year. And I saw that and I said, hey, how can I invest in something that can bring long-term value and long-term wealth for myself and my family? And obviously, the age-old real estate is the classic answer for that. And I think there's a reason why some of the top most wealthiest people in the world, own real estate and got their wealth from real estate. So I started my real estate journey just as an LP. I looked at different asset classes, including like hotels, hospitality, self-storage, people who are doing multifamily. I put a little bit of capital in each of those as an LP.
In which deals? Do you remember? No, which 3 deals you put, which asset class? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So one was a hotel, and that hotel was right outside of Orlando next to Disney World. So it was one of those like Residence Inn type hotels. So that was one. Long story short on that one, we invested in 2019 and then COVID happened in 2020.
Yeah.
But then, after COVID, it started performing well. And then I did a self-storage deal. It was a portfolio of 12 properties in the Northeast, Pennsylvania and New York State. So did that. And the third one, I did a multifamily deal that was based in Texas. And Saul, I think that, taught me a lot about like these asset classes. Even, I asked the GPs, the people who are putting the deals together, hey, can I see your model? Can I see your underwriting? Like, why do you love this deal? Asking a lot of questions to learn and realized that actually from all of them, all 3 of those asset classes, storage really stood out to me and decided to start spending more time on that asset class.
Makes sense. All right. So that was like 2019. When was the first deal you went as a GP? When you rolled up your sleeves, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this right now.
Yeah, so that was 19. I was doing like LP stuff up until about 2021. My first deal really, funny stories, I closed on 3 storage facilities in a matter of a quarter. And that was in 2022, back half of 2022. So, I would say early 2022 is when I decided to really spend my time and really invest myself, right? I wanted to have more of that value, more of the promote, as, these people GPs will call it, and really started doing what a lot of new, I think, storage investors and real estate investors do is cold calling myself. Then I hired a VA, underwriting myself, structuring the deal myself, reaching out to the owner, trying to build that relationship, share how we can make different offers work, right? Whether that's cash at close, whether that's seller financing, and really started doing that on my own. And another great thing that helped a lot was joining up masterminds, right? Real estate and storage masterminds, which really helped excel not only the education side, but mainly like trying to find deals and partner with people on deals.
Makes sense. Awesome. Now, so are you right now full-time all in, or are you still in the consulting world as well?
Yeah, so I'm actually, I would say, part-time e-commerce operator and part-time storage investor and operator. So I spend about anywhere from 50 to 60% of my time in real estate right now. I think that'll change down the line, but that's what's happening now.
Makes sense. Okay, gotcha. So it's 2-part question. So I'm going to go with the first part. Do you remember when you bought the deal yourself, the first deal when you bought it? What was the feeling? Meaning when you sign on that, all right, it's on you. Just can you just share with the listeners? And a lot of them, they're on the cusp of making that first deal. I know jumping from LP side to GP side where you it's on you. So how was it? Remember?
Man, it was so nerve-wracking.
All right.
I actually remember, so I told you I closed on 3 deals in a quarter. So that quarter was one of the most stressful quarters of my life. And not only that, about 4 months after that, I had a baby. So, my wife was pregnant. So I was planning for that as well. But I remember, my first deal, it was a seller finance deal. So it wasn't as complex on the lender side. But I just remember just taking extra time and being too analytical in the underwriting process, trying to negotiate on that deal with the seller. But even when I closed on it, I think at that time good for my learning, but I was so detailed and so precise on making sure every penny that, the seller had that we needed to split in escrow was accounted for, that I had every single bit of information of the tenants and that every little pristine capex done. Work was done. Was overboard about it, but I just remember I needed this to be perfect, and I was so nervous doing it because I was like, this one, it's the first time I invested this much capital in a property, even though, seller financing, like I wanted everything to be perfect. And, in hindsight, I did a little bit too much, but, it was a good learning lesson.
What's takeaway from that experience for you?
Yeah, I would say the high level takeaway for me is, you need to move fast, and you need to move fast to just get into a deal, right? You don't want to do a crappy deal, right? You don't want to do a deal that loses money. But sometimes as a new investor, you're not going to find that perfect value add deal right away. Sometimes you should just move fast to get into a deal to learn and, have that credibility and have that mindset that, hey, I'm a real estate investor and operator. So that's one around moving fast. And point B on moving fast is like, you know, I spent a lot of time wanting to call each tenant. It was storage, right? So call each tenant and, I didn't want to pass that off or delegate that to a call center or a VA. And it took time and I was very slow, but I feel like I could have moved faster to delegate some of that stuff off, even showing up to the property when CapEx was happening, right? Like that just wasted everyone's time. So I think I could have moved faster in the operating process so that I could focus on more deals. And so I think the main takeaway is move fast to get into a good deal and move fast in operating that deal.
That's amazing. Yeah. And while we're talking, I'm just gonna share the quick story because I just want to share the story, which I can relate to that. Right? It's that beginner's mindset when you have so much conviction that it's gonna work out, and just going all in and at the whole odds against you. Had a baby, 3 properties on your plate right away, no systems yet, right? So I remember in 2008 when the market was about to crash, I opened a real estate company, mortgage company, and we had a 1-year-old baby
Wow.
opening, and nothing was working, like nothing was happening, but there was so much conviction that it's going to work, and we plowed through that period, right? And when we look at in the hindsight, like what I was doing, like it was, but no, but it taught us, you can operate in any environment. You just really can pull that magic, and just gonna plow it through. So I
Absolutely.
probably would not be able to do it right now in those type of conditions. But when you have the beginner's mind, when you don't know exactly what's working, what's not, just make the thing work, So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
No,
great.
for sure.
It's amazing. All right. So, all right. Next follow-up question would be on that note. So when did you realize that, okay, I can make a career of that? Because obviously making money from e-commerce and you're still testing the real estate. And I know there is most of the real estate most millionaires in the US are made out of real estate, right? Most billionaires, I think, from businesses, but that's kind of, the old saying. But on your from your personal journey, when was the moment you realized, okay, I think I can make it full time and I can make it that's my thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the point at which I realized that real estate can be my full-time thing is, when you start to improve your financials, you improve revenue and you cut expenses, you have your magic number NOI. And when you say, hey, every, $1,000, for example, of NOI at an 8 cap, what does that equate to? That's several thousands of dollars, right? And in that moment, I was like, I knew that on paper, right? And this is still on paper to some extent, but when you're actually operating and you see, holy crap, like every time I do rent increases, right, and I'm testing that out, or you can sign a new tenant in small bay for even turning a gross lease into triple net, for example, like the value that you add. When I saw that, hey, that's possible in real life, that's when I was like, wow, real estate can be a thing that I want to go into full time. I think the reality is, I'm sure some of your listeners also know is real estate takes time. It's not a get rich quick scheme, right? Maybe unless you're flipping land or whatever, but
Exactly.
it takes time. But if you can do the proper value add, there's no other kind of, I think, better place to get like those strong returns.
Yeah. And I definitely want to relate to that, what you're saying, those very quick numbers in your mind. So let's say for me, it was always like eye opening. I remember, okay, so every $1,000 I push in gross, like not necessarily an NOI a month, that's actually $1 million in value. I'm like, whoa, so that's 100x. Like if I get $1,000 more a month, that's a $1 million. That's 100x, not $1 million. It's 100x, which is $100,000 in value every $1,000. Or every 10,000, it's $1 million, which is quite easy kind of to grasp and how much compounding effect you have. So that's great. All right, so let's move towards self-storage and industrial. Why? Okay, so you mentioned you saw from LP side that storage was possibly making more cash flow or becoming more better deals. When was the pivot and why was from self-storage to small bay industrial, or are you still going after both of them?
Yeah. I'm definitely still going after both of them, but some really interesting things happened. So my second and third deal all had some component of larger spaces and demand from business tenants, right? So one of the deals that I bought in Central Florida, that deal had about 7,000 square feet of flex, and what I quickly realized is that product type was actually more in demand, and I was able to lease it faster than the storage side. In that particular deal in Central Florida, the previous owner probably had the flex at like $5 gross, and the market was at 12 triple net. And at that time, I'm like, oh, I didn't even know what triple net was. I just saw $12 on Crexy and LoopNet, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave this, rent this for $12 a square foot. And the tenants that were there all wanted to stay.
Mhm.
And the one that wanted to leave, I leased it up right away. And that kind of was a good eye-opening experience to the product type. My third deal had like 600, 800, and 1,200 square foot storage spaces. And I saw that you're like, trades like people who fix lawnmowers or a guy who does gutter work. He wanted to store his materials there. And the other thing I realized is, they didn't have a lot of places to go to store or work out of, and they were willing to pay top dollar, and they were never delinquent, right? Versus storage. And I was like, man, this is the asset class to explore more. And, ironically, I was in a mastermind for storage where one of your partners, Shay, he was in the same mastermind, and Shay, an incredible person. I started talking to him about both storage and flex, and, he educated me a lot on the asset type. And I was like, all right, I actually need to spend more time on this asset class.
That's great. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, for sure. Small bay industrial, I think right now is definitely kind of a new self-storage type asset class. I've seen those when I tell the show. I've seen those movies in the past. I've seen it with apartments. I've seen it with industrial. I've seen it with self-storage. And right now, the small bay industrial, it kind of comes and goes. The one those cabs get compressed gets in demand. But yeah, leasing right now is really easy compared to other asset classes just because that asset class is underbuilt. What happened is big boxes in metropolitan areas took a lot of that space. Let's say in Chicago, a lot of those were bulldozed and just put big boxes, and it's not cost effective to build those small bays. So that's why there is kind of a shortage of that, and leasing it's definitely easy. And to that point that you're seeing more demand than itself. So for example, we had quite a few facilities were actually collapsing self-storage units and making small bay. Let's say, from, 10 by 10, so 10 by 20s, who making, 20 by 20, or if that is, we have one facility in Fort Myers where it's back to back. I think we're making 20 by 30s, and they are leasing actually for more money. Again, that's market to market specific. It's not necessarily every single market has that discrepancy on demand, but arbitrage is going the other way around. So that's great that you experience that. All right, so I think next thing I would really like to dive in your deal in Port Charlotte, Florida, and if I may, let's I'm looking right now on LoopNet. It's a typical small bay industrial, no man door, garage door. That's probably 14 feet or 12 feet.
Yeah, 14 feet.
14. Yeah, that's the perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect size. These are going like a hotcakes. So, all right. So let's dive into this deal. The deal it is 7253 Gasparilla Road in Port Charlotte. Tell me about how did you find this deal?
This deal actually came through a connection with brokers from Shea. He had put me in touch with them. And, I think one thing that you guys are really good about, and Saul, I've heard about you, is like, you need to network and put yourself out there. Real estate is an industry of people who, to some extent support each other and help each other out. Networking is really important. So I was put in touch with these brokers, and, there's this deal that was severely undermarketed, and the rates that the previous owner had were really low. So started talking to the brokers and realized that, hey, this could be a seller finance deal. And Shay was very helpful in helping structure some of that and guiding me on how to even think about, is there demand there? If there is demand, great, but what rents can you get? How to think about CapEx for this specific tenant type. So yeah, in conversations with the brokers, we realized that, hey, there's opportunity to seller finance because the prior owner, who was 80 something years old, didn't keep any paper records.
Mm-hmm.
All of the leases were basically verbal agreements,
Handshakes, okay.
the handshake agreements, and there was no real kind of property manager. The property was completely out of shape. The issue with it's good for us as buyers, but the issue for banks is like, there's no record, right? How can they prove that any money was coming in because the bank accounts don't match up? There's no leases in place. You can get estoppel signed, but like, how reliable are those? So it was a pretty crapshoot of a deal from a bank financing perspective, but because we were able to seller finance it, it made our returns so much better. The other thing I'll add is the rates that the previous tenants were paying were about $11 gross, right? But in this market, we saw we can probably get like $11 to $12 triple net. And we, in fact, have been able to push that. We have 9 out of the 12 units leased up now in about 8 or 9 months. And we're actually getting $12.50 to $13 triple nets. And in Florida, especially in the coast, the cams here are like $5, $5.50, right? Because the insurance is so expensive, but people are paying it. And, it's a very tight market, not a lot of supply. And we've been able to lease up at those rates.
That's amazing. Yeah. I can't give it, but I want to give also listeners and you maybe some tips, if on the next deals, when there is no vacant boxes, you can go hard money or cash, right? I remember I had one deal. I could not go seller financing. It was like a trust sale. It was, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, 1-to-1 Commerce in Crete. The demand was so high that I leased up the facility 100% from 0% occupancy to 100% occupancy within 60 days. And I switched last moment to the traditional financing, even though we had to call cash, So that's another thing, really. Awesome. If you push hard on leasing, you can lease almost like an apartment sometimes. It is demand, Of course, there is a lot of work involved, but it's possible. On insurance side, we have a couple lenders working, actually getting quotes right now. There is a possibility to get no win policy, which slashes your insurance at least in half, maybe even less. So you just carry the risk of roofs are blown away, but deductible is so high, it doesn't make sense actually when you compare it. So you can get the no win policy, and lender's going to be fine with that. And we can chat about it off the call. But that's for a listener, someone who is in Florida. There's these opportunities are coming up. All right, great. So just to nudge a little bit on that, the finding the property, you said it was from the brokers. Was it off market? Was it on market? Or it was just like mismanaged on market? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was more of a pocket listing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't on the market.
Mm-hmm.
On LoopNet or Craigslist, it was a pocket listing. And I think the brokers wanted to sell this to someone that can move fast, right? And deal with the uncertainty that the owner had created around the paperwork. And really, I think showing the brokers that, hey, we can not only close on this if we had to with cash, right, through hard money, for example, like you had mentioned, but also like someone who could come in and do the work to prove that the rates are there, that the demand's there. And, we even showed the broker everything we were doing around, we ran Facebook ads, Facebook marketplace listings to prove that, hey, like there are people clicking on the ads. There are people reaching out. There are people who want to see this. And because we are to prove that we can get the rates we felt, and we communicated that to the brokers, like, hey, we're confident in closing. And we did that really fast. I think that stood out for them.
That's awesome. All right. So all about the property. Do you remember the size, how much you bought it, occupancy, and NOI? Any of those numbers, if you remember. Size, price, NOI.
Yeah, the size is just shy of 13,000 square feet. There's 12 units. They're all about 1,100 square feet each. We purchased it. I think it had about 140K in NOI. At that time, it came out to right around, I think, a 7 cap. No, sorry, it had 140K in revenue and about 85K in NOI.
Okay. How much did you buy it
And
for?
that, it was 1.15 million or so.
Okay. And where do you think it's trending to be, let's say, when you're full?
Yeah, when we're full, we'll be at like I said, about 1250 triple net. So that I'm hoping at like a 7.5 cap, we could probably sell that for about 2.2, 2.3.
Amazing. Great. Yeah. We moved one deal in Fort Myers, 7.5 cap, about 4 months ago. Still 7.5 cap. Yeah. So it's definitely those caps are still there. All right. Great. So 1.5, how much CapEx do you think you put in?
We put in about 80K of CapEx.
Great. That's great. And TIs, not too much TIs, right?
Zero TI.
Yeah.
Zero
And
TI.
so each unit has a bathroom or no?
Each unit has a bathroom, and I would say half the units have like a small like office, like more like a closet type office. And interestingly, what I've found is the units that don't have offices, the tenants are willing to spend their own money to put offices in, because some of them, I guess they need their certificate of occupancy or occupancy permit to move in and have it for their business license. And because they need the office and there's not a lot of supply, they're like, you know what, don't worry about it. Lease it to me and I'll get it ready so that I can get my, occupancy going.
Yeah, that's amazing with this asset class. Now I do have retail properties, right? So or office properties. It's very different, right? With these units, if they turn, you just go and spray. That's $1 a foot, and you turn the unit. And most of the time, these tenants will come in and improve your property. I'm like, wow, that's great. As opposed to office retail. I mean, they will ask 6 months, 12 months of abatement, another $20 in TI, that's being generous, and sometimes you're gonna get like $100 request, and this is just not the conversation in Small Bay, you just very rarely hear those conversations, meaning like, here you go.
We will throw in like a couple of weeks or maybe a month of free rent just to get someone moved in faster because the toilet needs to get changed or something. And it's easier for them to do it. But yeah, you're right. Like no one is even starting the conversation of TI, right? That doesn't even come up.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. All right. So what was your plan when you were buying, when you were closing? What was your plan? And are you sticking to the plan, or did you have to pivot? That's the question. What was the plan when you were?
Yeah. I think the original plan was, hey, it was almost 100% occupied, but with month-to-month leases, like handshake leases. But the tenants, I'll be honest with you, it was really hard to get them out, right? And to the point where, we had to have some eviction type conversations. That kind of getting the tenants out, turning them. I also didn't want to, because it was my first small bay deal, like tell everyone to leave at the same time, right? I wanted to kind of phase it in. So the plan though was to get all that done in 6 months. But because some of these tenants are, I guess, lower quality rather tenants, and don't really care about respecting a legal letter, if you will. It took longer for them to move out. So I think it's going to take us probably 10 months instead of 6 months to do the full stabilization. So that's one thing regarding the plan that kind of slightly changed. And I think going in, we were thinking, hey, if I can get this 100% stabilized, then we can put it back on the market with the same brokers, right? And sell it. I think that's still the case, but there's also opportunity to just hold because it cash flows, so well that maybe it's an asset that you just hold on to because the cash flow is so great.
What's the term do you have on your seller finance? How long is the term on a seller financing loan?
Yeah, it's 12 months, so I'm going to have to refinance it.
Yes.
And, a lot of the banks that I've started to talk to, they're okay with a straight refinance where they just take out the seller note. I think it's a lot tougher for banks nowadays, or maybe the banks I'm talking to do like a cash out refi. I've gotten a little bit more hesitation on that.
Typically you'll see when you have 12 months in, that seasoning is gone and it's easier conversation. It's still tougher conversation to have, but once you're going to pass 12 months, that's going to be easier.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
It's good to hear.
All right. All right. This is great. So give me your takeaways from this deal for the readers who are listening to this. What are the takeaways on this?
Yeah. I would say that there are two takeaways, and the first one is, especially when I compare it to storage, it's the game for small bay and being in this asset class. There's a lot of work up front, but if you can do really high quality work up front, the rest of the time, once you get everything leased up, is, I would say, a lot easier, right? And you can move on to the next deal. In my mind, as I think about storage, it's more of a business. It's more operations heavy throughout. People are moving in and out every 30 days, a lot of turnover. But with small bay and flex warehouses, it's like, if you can do great work up front to get it leased properly, or work with a great leasing broker, if that's the avenue you want to take, you can quickly move on to the next deal, right? It doesn't turn into that operating business. And that was a great realization as I'm in it and I'm trying to scale my portfolio, why I think I really love this asset class. And the second thing is, I think in this asset class, there's a lot of nuances that vary by county or by market, and working with people who have already done it is very important, I think. There's things in the diligence process that I didn't think about, like how to confirm zoning, or when tenants have to go for their permits, like, how you can set them up for success. How to work with the brokers, right? And I think working with, and mentioning him again, Shay, because, he's your partner. I think having him, someone I could lean on, was actually very helpful versus, storage. It's a little bit more straightforward, not as straight, not super easy, but a little bit more straightforward. But small bay, there's so many nuances that I think working with people or working with someone that's done it, and even if you have to let go of equity, right, to do that, I think is very important.
100%. Yeah. 100% on industrial and in a small bay industrial. One of the biggest risks actually is municipality relationship and code compliance and stuff like that, because it's kind of, less straightforward, as you say, like self-storage. There's a lot of nuances, uses allowed, what's not allowed, site storage, sprinkler system. I mean, there's so many nuances go into that. And a lot of times it is still vague. And if you have a bad relationship, you can lose on the deal. And if you have good relationship, good advice, you know what you're doing, then it's easy. But yeah, it's definitely significant risk is municipality compliance, and you have to be straight in that. So it's great advice. Great. Awesome. So next one is a development. So next deal is a development. I believe that one is in Texas. It is in Texas, right?
Yep.
No.
Yep. It's about 45 minutes north of Houston in Montgomery County.
So that's really exciting. Ground up development. I haven't done ground up development on small bay. The only thing I did is multifamily, but it's very exciting always to see. And actually the ground up developments for someone who likes to create and build, actually, it just becomes like a tinkering project, which I love, and kind of dissociate yourself from a nice. That's how, that's for me. And you're losing sense how long it takes. Usually for me, it takes much longer, much longer to do it.
Yeah.
But I think it's very, very rewarding when you do it. Like I actually did it, and I thought about every single detail in this project. This lock, this drain, this, everything what comes into, you have a touch to it, right? So that's really, really rewarding, So, all right, so let's go. Tell me about this property and how'd you find it?
Yeah. I think, Saul, before I get into that, I think one thing that was interesting of why I thought about the development route is, after this Port Charlotte deal, I wanted to buy more flex warehouses, small bay. But what I quickly realized is that the owners are more sophisticated than versus storage owners. And I think that's because more brokers are calling them, educating them, but to some extent, maybe they have business tenants, so they're more sophisticated because you're dealing with the business versus the consumer. And the acquisitions process of going direct to seller was a lot more difficult. And at the same time, the deals on the market, sellers still want a lot of money. So the deals on the market were just too expensive for like my return that I want on my own personal capital, right? So that's where I thought, maybe shifting to development and seeing if there's an opportunity there. That's why it made sense for me, especially in a market where, I've seen throughout the Sun Belt, there's just so much demand. But if you could find a market that has high occupancy, thus high prices, and there's, not a lot of kind of other supply coming online, you can really make a development work, right? Especially if the land is cheap enough to do that. And so I started finding pockets across the US using things like Perplexity, AI tools, researching, hey, where are there certain metrics of population growth, business growth? Where are markets that have high occupancy and high rates? And then the third lever for me, which was like cheap enough land to make development possible. And I did find pockets in the Southeast, like Carolinas, Georgia, and also in Texas. And I said, hey, I'm living in Houston now. It'll be my first development. Let me make it kind of close to home. So that's where I started exploring, greater Houston market. And there are several markets in greater Houston, but I was able to find one where I saw prices were, $14, $15, maybe even $16 triple net. Any of the small bay that was in the market is, 95 to 100% occupied. And the land is, cheap enough, not $20 a square foot, but, maybe sub $6 a square foot. And found this pocket in Montgomery County and, actually started joining another program that does development work, just to learn and, quickly realize, to do a development, you need a strong team, architect, engineer, VC, work closely, like we were talking about with the municipality about zoning. So you need to get the right people on board for that. So I've just started that process to find the right engineer and architect and then get bids from a GC.
So where at with this deal? Did you took down the land or you're in contract or where it's at? Or is
I'm
you
under,
broke ground?
yeah. No, I'm under contract on the land right now. I'll close on it in about less than 30 days. So I'm out of my due diligence period. And now is a time where I've had some pre-development meetings with the town and I've zeroed in on who my engineer and architect are going to be. So I'm parallel processing just the close process. The seller has a 1031, so I can't close on it right away. They want the full time to close, which I'm okay with. And now we're starting the pre-development work with the architect and the civil engineer.
Makes sense. Okay, got you. So, tell me, what are you putting over there? How big is the land? How big is the building you're putting on? That type of thing, if you can give me an idea. And maybe you can share notes how much rent you planning to go. You mentioned 14, 15, 16, but maybe like rule of thumb numbers so I can understand, maybe readers can just reverse engineer roughly.
Yeah, for sure. So, the land is about 3 acres. So not, huge. And the interesting thing about, the market that I'm in is you need a lot of space for water detention, right? So you can't max out maybe like in other markets where you can get, a lot of square footage. So on 3 acres, I'm going to be building roughly 32 to 35,000 square feet.
Okay.
So that's going to be across 3 buildings. We want to keep each building under 12,000 square feet because when you go above that, I think in most places you need sprinkler systems, which become really expensive. Yeah, we'll do 3 buildings, ideally hitting about 35,000 square feet in total. And we're going to aim for 16 triple net. In my underwriting, I'm at, I think, around 1450. So I'm being conservative in my underwriting. I think we can definitely get $15 triple net. And looking at about a probably 18 to 24 month cycle until we can get stabilized. And the plan has to be that we start doing pre-leasing as we're developing.
Okay. So 24 months, that including lease up or that's just development?
That's including lease up.
So you're closing this deal without entitlements or you're closing this deal with entitlements?
So the zoning is already there for this product. I'll be honest, like when you say entitlements, I don't know exactly what that means.
Well, yeah, it's meaning like, do you have permits approved already or not yet?
So the permits are not approved. I'm starting that process now, but we've had pre-development meetings with the town, confirmed the zoning, confirmed that they're good with this type of use and asset class, confirmed exactly what their like ordinance requirements are. And from that standpoint, it seemed very clear that we can move forward. The good thing about this market is there's not a lot of like, heavy zoning requirements anyway, which was a strong benefit. Yeah, we'll get the permits approved in the pre-development process.
Did you do the math, rough math, know how much you're going to be per square foot all in on construction and engineering and land?
Yeah. I think on this will be, and I could do some quick math as well. But if you think about this, there's obviously your hard cost, right?
Mhm.
Your cost of construction. There's the soft cost of engineer, architects, lawyers. But one thing I think people forget to also think about is you have your carrying cost, right?
Exactly.
The
Holding
holding
costs,
costs are
yes.
huge.
Holding costs,
Holding
yes.
costs are huge. So I think we're going to probably be at about 4.5 million all in,
That's going to be
on
100 bucks,
34,000
give it a
square feet.
little bit more. So it's going to be like $120, right? That's not including land, right?
That's including land. That's
That's including land. And you're going to be at what?
130, 130.
130 bucks and you're aiming for 16 triple net, right?
16 triple net. Yeah. I think, I'll also be happy with, I think 15 triple net on.
Yeah. So that's what is that then basis cap? So north of 12, I think, right?
Yeah. So I think if I do that math,
16 divided by, so that's
I should know it on top of my head. Yeah. It's like 11 and a half, 12 cap.
like 12 cap. Yeah. So I don't know if I usually run this math in my head. So let's say it's 132, and you have $16 triple net. So I'm just going to divide $16 from $132 per foot. You're getting a cap roughly,
Yeah. Exactly.
That's great. Yeah. And if you execute on that within 2 years, that's great. If it's going to turn to 4 years, it's probably going to be, a little less. That was my experience with development, right? Yeah. And I'm only from residential coming back. It was just at least 1.5, 2 times more than I expected. And they just like, it looks so good on basis, but when you divide it right now in 4 years, I'm like, oh shoot, it's not that pretty anymore. So that's actually the biggest, for me, I would, kind of bottleneck, or that I'm not necessarily always can push that quickly and develop because something, this and that, but if we can come up with a system in 2 years and just bake those units 12 cap, yeah. Why would you buy something that you need to stabilize, right?
Yeah. And I heard the same. I'm like, I've always heard development is always more expensive and always takes longer than you think.
And you lease actually for more. From my old case study I started writing 9 months ago, I look back 4 years ago. There's three things always. One is that takes longer. 100% of the time, it costed more on the construction side, but I think it's almost 100% of the time that we lease for more and actual NOI is higher, and that's saved us
Okay.
every single
That's
time.
good.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about like the flex warehouse is like, it's not like multifamily where like there's more intricacies. It's like you have a shell box, right? Steel kind of metal shell box. And 10% of it is your office and bathroom, right? Or maybe it can be a little more than that. So I think from that standpoint, like you can buy pre-engineered, prefabs like material. And my goal is, even if I have to spend more on a civil engineer, an architect, and even to some extent a GC, but they've done this and they've put up 3, 4, 5 of these developments already, like it's worth it to minimize the risk of that taking much longer or hitting a hiccup.
And are you taking that just as a partner, or you're hiring on a fee basis?
It's going to be a fee basis. I haven't broached the topic of taking them on as a partner, but I think that could be a great idea.
Yeah, I'm just curious. No. Yeah, but that's great that you're doing this development by yourself, and can't wait to see the fruition of that. A couple more things about this property. So, what are your plans for this? Are you holding that long term? Selling it right away? What's the plan?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep the options open. From what I don't know what's gonna happen in 2 years or 3 years in the market, right? But if I can get like a really good deal on it, because I know people are trying to roll up these across certain markets, if I can get a good deal on it, I'd love to sell it when it's stabilized. But if I can't, I'll refinance out hopefully the capital and hold on to it. I think the cash flow is going to be lower than something that I would
Yep.
acquire. But if I can get my money out through a refinance, that would be great. But I will definitely try to put it on the market when it's stabilized.
Put it in the market makes sense. Or do you think it's going to value when it's stabilized? Let's say it's $16.
Yeah. I think at $16, I think you can go for probably like 7 to 8 million. Let's see, that would, if my NOI is roughly like 544, there's probably some growth built on that. But if I can get, you know, for a new build, a 7 cap, that's 7.7 million.
7.7 million, right? Right. And you were all in. We're going to be all in, you think?
4.4.
Nice. That's a great return. That's a great project. Amazing.
It's all on paper now, so we'll see.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. um, all right. So on that note, what are the takeaways so far on this deal? I know you're about to close. So what are the takeaways for the readers?
Yeah. The takeaways on this for me are it's my first time doing a development. And the biggest thing when I was trying to, similar to before, like trying to understand the zoning or trying to understand how much square footage I can build on it or what the exact detention requirements are, like one individual can't do that on their own. You need to get the experts in the door. And my biggest takeaway from doing this is you need to work with the best people who know it. And don't be cheap about it, right? I've heard stories where people try to get a very cheap engineer or a cheap architect. And when the GC got the plans, they're like, these are wrong. You can't put these pieces together. And I heard a horror story of that then taking so much more time, going back to the municipality and doing a change in the plans. So for me, the biggest learning, yeah, is like hire a really strong team because that's going to excel your process if you're doing a development.
100% learned so many times. You go cheap and you go long, I mean, there is a reason, why people hire unions, let's say in Chicago, and they still come out better. I just had a gas station right next to me. It was built like in 4 months. And I'm like, how do you
Wow.
do this in Cook County? Like, well, just because, these guys just has the process, that's been doing it probably for 75 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So, which is, if you hire Billy Bob, it's going to be 3-year development,
Yeah, exactly.
So that's, I learned many times that. All right. So I would like to wrap this up with typically one personal question, if I may. So on a personal level, what do you dream of achieving one day through your work in real estate? If you can share with listeners and inspire them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I have a daughter. She's 15 months, about to be 16 months, and she's, turned into my best friend. My wife is also my best friend, but my daughter's,
Amazing.
my new best friend. What I hope to be able to do is take her to these properties, show her them, right? I have this dream of saying like, hey, maybe she's not going to be a real estate investor in the future, but being able to like walk with her on their property, show her what I've built or what I've bought and where we've been able to take it. That's what I'm envisioning years down the line where, she's playing on the properties that I own.
That's so awesome. Yeah, that's great. I can relate to that. I have 2 boys and a daughter, and I was flipping a lot of houses and then housing, and I think I put my 2 boys when one of them was like 11 and the one's 14. Painting, doing some interior work, and my oldest one, he flipped his first house in 16. So just it's
Wow.
very very
That's
inspiring
awesome.
to see how we can pass that knowledge and magic to our kids. Amazing. Congrats. Yeah. So last thing, where do the people can find you? If you have any plug-in where you need capital partners deals or whatnot, whatever it is. Now, if you want to plug in, where can people find you? That's the time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. So I'm on LinkedIn. So it's Shoaib Kabani, Hoaib, last name Kabani, Kabani, or it's just my email, first name dot last name at gmail.com.
Okay. Anything in particular looking capital deals or
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now is deals, right? But I'm also open to being a capital partner, doing JV deals. I think all the options are open, but really, I think the biggest criteria would be like, need to go into strong markets. Yeah, open to either JVing on a deal or, even providing advice to anyone who's new, right? And just need someone to talk to.
that's awesome. All right. All right, guys. So that was the Value Builder podcast. That's how we build value. Show was a great example to this, and looking forward to next conversations. Someone who is looking to attend the boot camp, we're doing that June 21st, 22nd in Chicago. That's going to be strictly about small bay industrial. And thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate that.
You've been listening to the Value Builder podcast. For more strategies, stories, and episodes, head to valuebuilder.co or subscribe on your favorite app. Always make it better than you found it and keep adding value. See you in the next one.